Hello everybody, I am Aikisha Holly Cologne and you're now tuned in to Jacksonian Media. I am from Jackson, Mississippi, born and raised, and being from Jackson it's a special thing. It's just something that's near and dear to my heart. I love being from Jackson, I love being from Mississippi, and I love seeing the expression on people's face when I travel and they say, well, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. And they're like, wait a minute, what? Yes, I'm from Jackson. Being from Jackson means someone who was being able to persevere and make it through. You know, people have a perception of Mississippi. They think we're just down here still picking cotton and pushing mules or pulling mules. And so to show them that Jackson is a progressive, growing city. There are a lot of African-American entrepreneurs here. There are a lot of opportunities for African-Americans in Jackson, Mississippi. And just to be able to show people that someone like me, a business owner, a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur is from Jackson. And I'm proud to say that I'm from Jackson, and I scream it loudly, say it proudly. I am a co-owner of Bricks and Hops Beer Garden. Our first location was open in the Bronx, New York. That's where my husband is from. And I'm also the president and executive vice president of my and my husband's foundation, which is the Willie and Aikisha Cologne Foundation. I am the vice president of my family's foundation here in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the Holly Foundation and is located on Farish Street. I was inspired to come home to Jackson because it's home. And I know that Jackson is growing. I know that a business like mine could progress and do extremely well here because there's no place like home, and your home people, they support. And we opened our business in the Bronx for the same reasons, because that was my husband's home. And he knew that he wanted to bring a business back to his community and bring economic development back to his community. So when we were done, and not really done, but when we finished getting our business going there, I looked at him and I said, you know what? I need to take this home to Jackson because I know that this is something that my city needs. This is something that Farish Street needs, and I knew that it would do well. Farish Street is a process, and a lot of people don't understand that. So I feel that it is going extremely well, especially now that I see that there's progression going on there. I see that JRA has opened the door of opportunity for people to come and invest on Farish Street. They are allowing you to come in and buy buy buildings on Farish Street to bring new business to Farish Street. I already own property on Farish, so I'm going to be using my own property for some of my businesses, and I am in the process of going through a proposal, presenting a proposal to the Jackson Redevelopment Authority and getting new property on Farish. What they fail to realize is that a lot of the issues that we deal with here in Mississippi, and we're just gonna put it out there like racism, they go on everywhere. But what I appreciate about Mississippi is really, they're upfront with it. You know, a lot of times when you go to these other places, especially like, let's just say New York, because I'm there and we have a business there, you know, money talks. So it's not that they're not racist. I'm dealt with a little different because of the simple fact I come to the table with something. Down here, they don't give a damn whether you have money or not, because if you black and they just don't like you, they don't like you. You know, so I have a better appreciation for being down here because I know what it is up front. A lot of the times people up north forget and they think, oh, well, it's not racist here as it is down there. Yes, it is. They only deal with you because you have some money. They still don't like you because you're black, but they can tolerate you. I always loved television, and my degree is actually in mass media arts, radio, television, film. I have a BA from Clark Atlanta University. So I knew that I wanted to be a part of television or film in some sort of way. That's why I went to school for it. Initially, I wanted to be in front of the camera. I thought that I was going to be like a news reporter or entertainment reporter. And then, you know, things change. It's not like you come directly out of school being able to go to sitting at the news desk or sitting on E! Entertainment News. So I ended up going a different route. I got into acting. I was in LA for a little bit, and when my grandmother got sick, I wanted to come back this way. So I came back to, I wasn't quite ready to come to Mississippi. So I went back to Atlanta where I'd gone to college. I bought my house there and I started doing some acting, but that wasn't really paying the bills like I needed it to do because I owned a house. So I considered going to law school. So I started working at a law firm for a little bit. But during that time, I was still dabbling in television. I interned at WSB, which is the ABC affiliate in Atlanta. I was on the first satellite radio station, which is Beehive FM in Atlanta, and I was a host on the midday show. But like I said, a lot of that, you know, if you guys are in this world, you know, you're not coming out making the big bucks. So I needed to do something that was actually going to keep that mortgage in the right, you know, place. So I did the legal side and considered really hard going to law school, but I knew I wanted to come out of Atlanta. I wanted to go out of Atlanta. So I started looking at the Northeast. I was looking at DC, I was looking at Philly, and I was looking at New York. Well, when I got to New York, I started grad school, and I also was coming back to the city from where, at the time, the guy that I was dating was from New York. He played professional football. He was with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, but then he was just going home to New York where he was going to retire, and he did his last 3 seasons at home with the New York Jets. So while being there in grad school, watching him transition from football into television broadcast, he was doing sports broadcasting, the bug hit me again. And I began to do things behind the scene with him, preparing him for interviews, preparing him for his broadcasting shows. And it was just like, I want to get back into this. Now, the question was about reality TV. I didn't necessarily see myself on a reality television show, but I knew I wanted to be back in television in some way. When the opportunity came, at that time, we had a business, which was Bricks and Hops. I knew what I wanted to do on Farish Street, and what better platform or what bigger platform is there than national television to promote my business, to promote what I wanted to get done on Farish Street, and to put it on a major network where it was an African-American network with an African-American audience. So that made my decision very clear. When the opportunity came, this is what I wanted to do. The attention you get, I was kind of getting a little bit of that through my husband. Because he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, he's a Super Bowl champion. I mean, they are the what do you call it, 6-ring gods. People were recognizing him almost everywhere we went. Even sometimes we were out of the country, I didn't realize how huge the Steelers were. Of course, I'm a football fan, but I'm not a Steelers fan. So dating him and then marrying him, I knew that, I had seen that type of attention. So that wasn't a big deal. It was having the cameras there all the time and them catching all the moments where, you know, intimate, what you would consider personal or private or whatever. But like I said, this is what I signed up for. After that, once the show airs and then you see yourself on television and then you begin to hear the other things that people think about you and saying and dealing with an audience and fans and people commenting and giving their opinions on your lives and everything that you're doing, that was different because being beside my husband, seeing and hearing that, it didn't really affect me because, you know, I wasn't the center of it. Now with the attention being on me, you have to have tough skin. And I'm not one of those that's easily offended. I don't give a damn what people think about me, especially people I don't know. And so I knew that was, again, a part of what I signed up for. And, you know, I just roll with the punches. So, you know, it's different, but it's not anything I don't feel I can handle. Well, people began to think, they would say, oh, she thinks she's better than everybody. Or, you know, for me, I'm a representation of Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm a representation of a large majority of Jacksonians. You know, African Americans do well here, but I have two sides. You know, I had an eternal adoption. My father's sister adopted me. So when I lived with my biological mother and my sisters, I grew up on Farish Street. And that area at one time was a poor area. I left from there and we went to Verdant Addition. But then when I moved with my father, sister, and his parents, my grandparents, I went from Forest Park Apartments, which people may call the projects, to Woodley. And anybody who knows Woodley, that's where prominent, affluent African Americans live. I went from a small apartment to a lot of square footage, to a house with a pool. And so I saw both sides of life. I went from going to Mary E. Morrison in Verdon Addition to St. Richard's Catholic School. So I saw the difference in the quality of education very early in my life. I went from books where we were signing our names on the cards and flipping the card over, and there were pages missing out of the books. So when I went to St. Richard's, every book we got was our own, and I took it home at the end of the year. So, you know, I came in and I was saying, oh, I'm the Queen of Jackson. Well, of course I was being, you know, sarcastic, and I was just like, oh, I'm the queen. But I have lived all over Jackson. You know, I lived on the west side. I lived with a great aunt who lived on Dalton Street, right across the street from Stamps. So I spent summers over there with her in the Addition, which is Washington Addition. I was with my grandmother. People know as kids, we go from one house to the other, especially if your mom and you know, your older sisters are still running and doing their things. You go with whoever's going to keep you, you know, watch you that night. So I know all of Jackson. And a lot of my cast members will make fun and they'll be like, oh, she know everybody, or everybody knows Aikisha. Well, I do know a lot of people because I know people from the west side to the east side, from the south side to the north side. And when I come in Northeast Jackson, I have classmates that went from St. Joe to St. Andrews to Jackson Academy to Jackson Prep. I do know all of the doctor's children and the lawyer's children and the part of Jack and Jill and all of these things. So I'm one of those who can literally and physically go from the crack house to the White House because that's my life. I've always had my feet in both worlds. And that's what makes me who I am. I've never been ashamed of where I come from on that side. I'm still friends with my friends that went to Morrison with me, that went on to public school, and I'm friends and I network every day with my friends from Northeast Jackson because it's those friends from Northeast Jackson that are helping me get Farish Street up and off the ground, but it's those friends from Morrison and Callaway and Powell and Northwest that are supporting me. And so, you know, she's the Queen of Jackson. Why am I so passionate about Farish Street? Farish Street is my history. It is just a part of my legacy. And when I think of how our people used to survive and thrive on Farish Street, I think about where it is now. And, you know, a lot of the issues, I don't want to be one of those bashing my city and always trying to highlight crime or some of the things that go on in Jackson that actually are going on all across the country. But when I do think about some of the things that are happening in Jackson right now that are very disheartening when it comes to crime, I think about us not having anywhere or a place where our youth, our teens, and our people feel comfortable going. And I think about when I was growing up and we used to have our Farish Street Festival. I think about growing up when we used to have Jubilee Jam. And I want to bring those things back to Farish Street. When you have options, when you have a place to go and eat good food, you have a place to go and listen to just homegrown music, good feeling music, having outdoor concerts, being able to go see art exhibits, being able to walk up and down the street and just express yourself through art, you're not really thinking about going to rob, kill, or steal. You know, so I'm hoping that bringing Farish Street back, bringing opportunity, economic development, bringing a place where people are able to just go and feel good and have a good time, bringing those type of things back to Jackson, I just believe that it's going to be the outlet and the change and the difference that we need. And it will definitely be something good to help the city grow and possibly stop some of the issues, stop some of the crime and some of the things that we're seeing happen now. I graduated from high school, Callaway High School, in 1995. So I left and went to Atlanta, Georgia to start my freshman year at Clark Atlanta University in the fall of 1995. It was very disheartening for me to come back to Jackson and see the state that we were in. You know, I did see a lot of progression when I was going into Northeast Jackson, when I was going to Madison and going to Ridgeland, and even when I go to Fondren. When I left in 1995, there was a movement happening on Farish Street. There was a developer who had come in, and Farish Street was supposed to be up and running by 2002, I think it was, or 2003. So I left Jackson with hope, knowing that when I came back, and after I had graduated from college, Farish Street was going to be up and thriving again. Well, that didn't happen. And each time I would come home and I would see this business had closed, or I would go up and down Northside Drive, a street that I went up and down many of days, every day actually, from Northside to Hanging Moss, from Hanging Moss all the way to downtown Jackson, through West Street. I'm looking at houses that had just been demolished or just were run down, businesses closing, things that we used to go to, little, you know, from teen clubs to nighttime activity that we had, we no longer have now. The kids no longer have. So what do? What do people do when they don't have anything else to do? When they feel there's no opportunity, there's nothing for them to do, they are not getting jobs, how do they survive? How do they live? How do they eat? And it's just to come back and see what had happened to my city. It hurt. Well, you hear people saying that they want to come to Jackson, or people who are already in Jackson or in the state of Mississippi saying, you know, we're going to come back and we're going to get Farish up and running. Well, after the developer I was talking about when I left, who had control of the project on Farish Street, whatever happened with him, the city was going into litigation, and there was a lawsuit going on for them to acquire the properties back on Farish. Everything on Farish was going through some legal issues, we'll say that, except those properties that were privately owned, which included my property, a property across the street from the building and property that we own, and then some of the buildings going north on Farish Street. Everything else was in this litigation. Everything else was tied up with the city. So when I was hearing people talk about, oh, I'm going to come back to do this and do that, they really couldn't do that because they weren't going to be able to buy these properties or go in just to get something started up, because it was hard to acquire property on Farish at the time. And that just opened up in, I want to say 2019 or 2020. And when JRA got control of the property, they just in the year 2022 put out an RFP, which is a request for proposals for people and investors to be able to come in and invest in properties and buy properties on Farish. So, you know, if you are part of the process and you know what's really going on downtown, it kind of sounded silly when people were coming in saying, hey, I'm going to buy the block back, because who are you going to buy it from? Well, I think it's just, you really have to do your due diligence, and really, it's a lot of hoops and that you have to jump through to actually obtain property in that area right now. And that's not just Farish. I mean, that was Farish and, you know, Capitol at one time and other places in downtown. But it definitely was really hard to even understand what was going on with the Farish Street, you know, historic district. So only reason I know is because my family has been a part of it and been involved in it and owners on Farish Street since 1896. So it was always a concern of ours what was happening with the area, because we're landowners down there. What is it like being the wife of an NFL player, a retired NFL player? At the time when Willie was playing, I was his girlfriend. So what is that like? You know what? Honestly, it was a lot of fun. I love sports and I love football. And so, you know, it's sort of the best of both worlds. Now, it could be challenging to some. You definitely have to have a good head on your shoulders. You know, it's not for those with low self-esteem or that easily can be shuffled because you have a lot of things coming at you at one time, and there are a lot of moving parts. And fortunately, my husband didn't move around a lot. He spent his first 7 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the last 3 seasons of his career with the New York Jets. So I met him in his last 2 seasons with the Steelers, and going into his when he was transitioning, going over to the New York Jets. Dating him as a Steeler, it was interesting. You know, I always keep it 100. Anybody that knows me, and my husband was fresh off a Super Bowl and had 2 appearances at a Super Bowl, won 1, lost 1, and you know, he was feeling himself. And my husband is 5 years younger than I am too. So, you know, for me, I was kind of like, listen, can't be letting this little young fella play me. You know, he's out here in these streets. He has women coming at him. He's doing well financially, and he's a Super Bowl champion. So he was enjoying life. Let's just say that. So we dated, you know, and at first that just didn't work, because for me, I was determined that I wasn't going to be one of many, and the only number 2 you were going to see on my back was on that Delta jacket. And I don't even want to be number 1, because if you're number 1, then that means you're not the only one. So I had to be very clear with him about that. So at first, dating didn't work well for us, but as God would have it, we turned a corner and ended up meeting again when I had moved to New York City. I was starting grad school, and he had just gotten with the New York Jets. And so it was kind of like, that was our first time being in the same city at the same time. When we first dated, he was living in Pittsburgh and I was living in Atlanta. But now we were going to both be in New York, and I felt like, you know what? At least we can give it a try, being in the same city at the same time. And if it doesn't work, at least I know we've given it our all, and we really tried to be in a serious relationship. And you know, I mean, I've had 99 problems, but getting a man ain't never been one. So I'm in New York City, so I knew I would be fine. But as we would have it, us being in the same city at the same time, we just really got to know each other. I got to know his family. My biological mom passed while maybe probably about 6 months after I moved to New York. And to see Willie come down to Mississippi, that was his first time ever coming to Jackson, Mississippi, and just really stepping in and stepping up and helping me through that grieving process. And when Willie met me, he had only met my aunt who adopted me, so he knew my aunt as my mom. He knew that I was adopted, but he had never met my sisters. He had never met my biological mother, and he met her over the phone, but he had never met her physically. So his first time in Mississippi was when he was coming to her funeral. And just watching him and seeing how he adapted to the 2 worlds that I lived in, you know, being from those 2 different sides of the tracks in Jackson. That was kind of what it was for him in New York, because he was from Melrose Project. He grew up in a very tough, about that life neighborhood, let's just put it like that. And he was exposed to different things through football. And so he too had his foot in 2 different worlds. So it was sort of like he got me and I got him. And when we got back to New York after that, you know, I felt like we were doing well dating, and this was, you know, the one. But I knew he was the one when I saw him in my world, and I saw him here in my city, in my home. And he told me coming here made him understand why I did so well with his family and in both of his worlds in New York. So from that point on, it was just, you know, we just became that for each other. So, you know, going to the games then was like, you know, I always walk with confidence, you know, whether I thought we were going to be together or not. I was never that girlfriend that was like, oh, I wonder if there's another chick here, or I wonder what. Listen, I told Willie from the beginning, if a bitch can beat me rocking, she can have my chair. So I was never going to be out here fighting and arguing and going back and forth with women and like that, because not saying that he was doing it, but the access that they have to women, it's I don't want to say a rock star life, but I don't know how other teams are, but just being a Steeler alone, it was a big deal. And he was living a great life. But when it was time for marriage and definitely fatherhood, I sleep well at night. Like, that's never been a part of my concern. We have a relationship on trust, on faith, on loyalty, and I trust him, he trusts me. So, that's it. Oh, I smile when I talk about my husband.
Because you don't see it a lot. Most people are not most people, I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people are with a guy that they probably don't adore the same way that you adore Willie. So, just for you, how good is that feeling for you?
Well, I smile when I talk about my husband because I am happy. I am in love. I love him more now than when we got married or when we first met. It's we've grown so much, and the more we grow, the deeper I've fallen in love with him, and I only pray it's the same for him with me. He's an amazing man. His mother did extremely well raising him. He is respectful of me and who I am. He's never tried to change me, nor have I ever tried to change him. And we understood that coming in. We literally, party together, have a funky good time together, but he's also the one that's up ready to go to church and praying with me and praying over me and for me. Our road to children was not an easy one. I was older than him, and it was hard for me to keep pregnancies because of my maternal age, because of the demise of my eggs. So we went through 8 miscarriages. We went through rounds of IVF. We went through just going to fertility doctors and fertility acupuncture, all of these things, trying to have a baby. And I just remember thinking, what if I'm not able to do this for him? And the insecurity jumped in. And so I never had insecurity about another woman or, infidelity or any of that, but the insecurity of he is a young man that deserves to have a legacy. What if I'm not able to do that? And I remember crying, and when the doctor looked at me and said, you need to think about donor eggs, because I don't think that you're going to be able to have a child with your own eggs. And him looking at me, and he didn't understand what that was. He just saw me burst out into tears. And he was like, well, what does that mean? She's saying we can have a baby, right? I'm like, yeah, I'll be able to carry a baby, but it's going to be with you and another woman. And he didn't get that. And we spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money with me trying to have a baby, and it failed every time. And as God would have it, I got pregnant on my own. And God not only said, people aren't going to have to question if it's your son, because my son looks just like me, so they know that wasn't a donor. And then I got pregnant again, and I had a daughter. I had my son at 42. I had my daughter at 43. When they were like, no, you're not going to be able to do this. But the God we serve said, oh, she's going to do it. She's just going to do it when I'm ready for her to do it. And so Willie was, even at that point, he never, ever wavered. He never, ever lost faith. And I remember him telling me, like, you're the one who brought me to our God. You're the one who was praying with me before every game. You're the one who made me believe the way I believe. So what's going on with you? This is going to happen. You're going to have this baby. He never, ever doubted that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And when I got over 40, I really was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Even though I had seen my son. I saw my son in a dream. So, that's why I smile when I think of my husband. I didn't want him not to be able to cut. To be able to cut it. Sorry, y'all.
Sorry. I It's cool.
Real relationship.
Thank you for watching Jacksonian Media.